We're back. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the LNBE Podcast, where LNBE stands for literally nothing but everything. I'm Mike Rispoli, and I am so sorry for not putting out an episode last week. I know. I have been so inconsistent doing this podcast as of the last few weeks. Actually, you could even say as of the last month. But reason for this week why I missed is because I went out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and on top of talking over my friends and the music at the bar and whatever else was going on, I lost my voice, and then I also got some sort of like a sickness. I think there's something going around where some sort of respiratory thing. It wasn't COVID, but just something is going around. So I lost my voice for the better part of a week. So to the people around me, it was probably a blessing. But for me, doing this podcast, it has just been so inconsistent, and I'm so sorry. And I gotta say, it's kind of like when you miss a day or two from the gym, where you're just going so consistently, and then all of a sudden, maybe you go on vacation or you get sick, like in my case, and you try and get back into it. And that first time that you're doing that first set, you're just like, what is my life right now? It is just so hard trying to get back into it. But we are back, and I am sorry. So let's kind of get into this. I hope you all had a very happy Thanksgiving. I know I'm only like 2 or 3 weeks late. No, I think I'm only 2 weeks late. Thanksgiving was fucking late this year, which is really funny because all over social media, which is something that I definitely have to get back into. I mean, if you guys are curious, check me out on Instagram and TikTok at the LNBE Pod. But all over like Instagram and TikTok, whatever, I was seeing people posting stuff of like, I always thought Thanksgiving was the third Thursday of the month, not the last Thursday of the month. And from what I know, Abe Lincoln was actually the one who established Thanksgiving back in 1863. And from what I at least think I know, he made it the last Thursday of November as a day of Thanksgiving because it was during the Civil War, and he wanted it to be a day that people could just pray for peace and have harmony and whatever, at least throughout the Union during a time of war. Because keep in mind, like during the Civil War, it was brother against brother. Even if these guys weren't fighting for the same side, they were all Americans. And it's so funny because then you see these brain teasers on the internet, like, what's the war that the most Americans died in? Of course, it's the Civil War. 600,000 people died in the Civil War, and they were all American. Well, didn't a lot of people die in Vietnam? Yeah, but if we're only looking at American statistics, only 60,000 Americans died in Vietnam. So there you go. There's your little war fun facts of the day. Oh, I'm just being a holly jolly asshole talking about war and death here. But yeah, technically, if it wasn't for Abe Lincoln, we wouldn't recognize Thanksgiving as a national holiday, even though, as we all learned in school, or as you all should have learned in school in 1621, when the Pilgrims had that big-ass harvest, and they decided to share it with the Wampanoag tribe and all of that stuff, that was considered the first Thanksgiving, but without Abe Lincoln, it wasn't considered a national holiday. So, there we go. Honestly, I feel like this should have been what I talked about last week instead of going on my tirade about dating apps, but this is where we're at. And trust me, there's plenty more for me to bitch about with that, but at least for today, we're going to move on to some greener pastures here. So I hope all of you guys ended up having a fantastic Thanksgiving. It's funny because on Thanksgiving, I was the only one who didn't drink, yet I was the one who ended up being on the floor. Reason being is because we went up to my sister's house up in Salem, Massachusetts, and we forgot the air mattress that I was going to sleep on. So what did we do? We took one of the little cushion things that my sister has on a loft in her living room, and I just ended up sleeping on that. So not the first time I've slept on the floor, also most likely probably not the last. But again, since I am bringing up the idea of Thanksgiving, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you guys because last week I did end up getting my Spotify Wrapped for this podcast. And apparently, for 35 of my fans, thank you, I made your top 10. For 30 of you guys, I was a top 5 show. I had a 4.6 rating, and I have 21 top fans. And I know for a fact that I have less than 20 friends. So, and I also have only maybe 2 or 3 family members who actually listen to this thing. So, for the 30 of you guys who actually do listen to this, who I am not affiliated with, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support. With your help, it's only going to continue to grow. But what I'm seriously looking for, guys, let's make this a resolution for 2025. You got to start writing in, because I can only run my yap for so much. So please write in. I really want to try and converse a little bit more with you guys. I know I could do better with the socials. I've already said that. But I'm going to throw it on you guys. If you could please just be a little bit more interactive with me. My email is lnbemedia@gmail.com. Please feel free to write in. I mean, I am so desperate to get better at this pod. And I'm almost approaching a year now. And out of the whole year, I've gotten like 2 write-ins. So I actually use ChatGPT to give me my advice, because I can't rely on any of you fuckers. So I got to default to a robot to tell me what's working and what's not. But I'll tell you what's not working is that CEO for United Healthcare. Oh my God, news of the week. Can we please talk about this? The fact that they still had the meeting after he was shot. And the worst part, you know they have Microsoft Teams because Zoom is for fucking hipster corporations or like startups. Zoom is not for established corporations like this. So you're telling me that couldn't have just been a Microsoft Teams meeting? They had to go in, and why? Because they just had to utilize the real estate that they were paying for? I'll tell you what, if that shit was remote, he probably wouldn't have gotten clipped. Oh my God. But the fact that they walked over this guy's dead body and was just like, you know what? We'll just get somebody to clean that up later. Is anybody truly shocked? Like, let's put this in perspective. United Healthcare is the biggest healthcare corporation in America. So, of course, they make also the most claim denials, or whatever the terminology is. Like, by sheer volume, that would just make sense to me. I don't know what the actual numbers are. I'm also not going to bother to look it up, because that's what I got you guys for. But no joke, considering that this corporation also gave the least amount, or the most filed denied claims, or whatever it is, this guy probably just had one claim not go through, and it was the last straw. And look, I've been on healthcare before, like working for corporations, and it is dog shit. Let's be real here. Your deductibles are so fucking crazy high. I've never actually been able to utilize my healthcare. If anybody else has been in this situation, please write in, because I can't be the only one. I'm a generally healthy person. I maybe would only get a physical once a year. You do your dental, your vision, whatever. But weirdly, dental and vision mostly covered. For some reason, actual healthcare with a primary physician, not covered at all. Make that make sense to me. Probably because that's the most expensive part. So why would a corporation want to pay for that shit? It doesn't benefit them. So my deductible has always been like extremely high. And then when I go and get a physical, I'm automatically paying a $50 copay on top of then doing like whatever the blood tests are, because when you're of a certain age, that's your physical. Everything's based off of your blood work. And the blood work is like $750 all the way up to God knows what. And that's all come out of my pocket, because none of my deductible ever gets put towards that. So I'm like, why do I have health insurance if I'm still paying out of pocket for this garbage? So you know what? It was only a matter of time before somebody got sick of it. And look, I'm not saying that I agree with what happened. I actually feel really bad for the guy's kids and the guy's wife. I mean, truth be told, it's not necessarily their fault that their father and husband was the one who worked or was the CEO for some heartless corporation. But like, it took this long for somebody to snap? Are we really shocked by this? Like, I don't know what the guy's situation is. I think they just found the guy. I think they just released his mugshot. I have not seen it. But like, say his wife or kid or whoever could be going through like chemotherapy or whatever, and all of a sudden United is just like, yeah, we're just not going to cover this. And he probably got fed up. Look, I really don't know what the guy's situation is. I'm just kind of talking out of my ass here. I need more information before I go and just make blanket statement claims like this. But the more that I'm seeing about these healthcare companies, the more I kind of understand it. Did you guys see this little tidbit that came out? All of a sudden, at least in Connecticut, I think it was Blue Cross Blue Shield. Somebody's going to have to look this up too. There was some sort of anesthesia that was covered under insurance. And then randomly they were just like, yeah, no, you know what? We're no longer going to cover this anesthesia. Good luck, everybody. Have fun paying for it. But the way that it worked was that it was based on how long the operation was supposed to last. So say you have, God knows what the operation is, but say it's supposed to last 6 hours and your anesthesia is only supposed to cover those 6 hours. If your operation were to go 8 hours, Blue Cross Blue Shield was just like, well, we're no longer going to cover those extra 2 hours, and that's going to have to come out of the patient's pocket. Whereas before, I don't think it really mattered how long the anesthesia was needed because all of it was covered by insurance. But Blue Cross Blue Shield is just like, nope, we're paying for a set amount, and that's final. If the patient needs more, the patient can go fuck themselves. That's not our responsibility. And it's not like that's the patient's fault that they need the anesthesia. And all of a sudden, once this United guy got fucking murked, all of a sudden Connecticut Blue Cross Blue Shield is like, maybe, we'll still cover the full percentage. So, I mean, I'm not saying that what the healthcare CEO murderer did wasn't wrong. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, he still killed somebody. That's pretty fucking bad. I mean, what kind of a Catholic would I be if I didn't at least follow the 6th commandment of thou shalt not kill? So I'm definitely not condoning this guy's actions. But I am saying that maybe he's kind of putting all their CEOs in check here with what they're allowing and what they're not going to allow. At least when it comes down to coverage. So maybe health insurance companies will actually do more to help cover people in need, and maybe you don't make the deductibles so crazy, stupid fucking high where people actually have to pay out of pocket for crazy amounts of money for typical generic little physicals or other basic necessities that people just need. Physicals, regardless of what company you have, should all just be standard covered. How is it that a friggin' dental cleaning 100% covered? Physicals are dependent on a friggin' deductible. And until you hit that deductible, that's when your insurance kicks in. It's all a fucking scam. Or am I wrong? Am I just thinking of this the wrong way? Like, I don't even have kids. I'm not married. But I can only imagine what that would be like. How much money that would cost. I mean, you go to the fucking vet, you're not spending anything less than $1,000 walking out of there, which is absolutely crazy because people would be way more willing to pay for an operation on their friggin' pet than they would be on themselves because it costs that much less and it's going to be that much less of a headache for them. So if a kid needs its shots or whatever, I can only imagine the cost that would bring to a family. So, yeah, I think if anything, now again, I don't know what this guy's motives were, but if anything, it shows that people are just getting sick and tired of what healthcare companies are doing. And it's kind of like no different than colleges to a degree, because colleges are becoming crazy expensive. I think I covered this on one of my very early episodes too. But at least nowadays, In order to even get your foot in the door in some company, you need to have a bachelor's degree. So colleges know, hey, we know that this is a requirement for any standard job nowadays. I think even working at McDonald's, you need to have some sort of a degree. So colleges know that people have to pay for these astronomical degrees, no matter what it's in, because that's the only way that they're going to be quote unquote hireable. So what do? They jack up their prices knowing that it's quote unquote a need. And I feel like that's what healthcare companies are also low-key kind of doing, because it's a need that everybody has to have. So they're going to jack up all of their prices regardless of what it is, because it's something that we all need and we all are going to have to pay for it no matter what. So I don't know. Something needs to happen here where there is some form of easier coverage and people don't just get denied things based on a pre-existing condition or whatever. I mean, the fact that insulin, I think, costs $60 for a 30-day supply. People spending $700 a year just on insulin is astronomically way more expensive in the United States than it is in any other country. And that's not something that even that person can control. Now, granted, if it's type 2 diabetes and you got that just because you're hopped up on sugar and instead of eating donuts, you can replace it with an apple every once in a while, then that's on you. And also, from what I know, type 2 diabetes can somewhat be reversed. You go on a treadmill, you watch your sugar intake, and you'll end up being pretty okay for the most part. But for someone with at least type 1 diabetes, or if they literally don't get their insulin or they will die, is that maybe one of the things that United was saying, hey, we're actually not going to cover? And I think people's eyes are being opened up to all this shit, and they're like, hey, something needs to happen. It's no different than that stupid insurrection that happened in January 6th. People were so pissed off at the government, they were like, hey, we're just going to go right to the source. Never mind the fact that our leader also pretty much told us to go and do this. But on the same note, this guy got so pissed off at his health insurance, he was like, hey, fuck it, I'm going to go right to the source. I don't know. Like I said, none of the details have come out, or if they have come out, I haven't looked into them, so I really don't know what this guy's motives were. I don't really know anything about this whole situation. But that is just my take on what I think is going on here. But since this was the most current news of last week, and considering I didn't do anything last week, I felt like I had to talk about it. But here's a promise to you guys that when I do another episode this coming Friday, it will be a little bit more fun and lighthearted. We're not going to talk about any of this garbage. I do have a pretty interesting story, or at least it's interesting to me, that I can tell you guys on Friday. Also, I do want to get back into some of the segments that I was doing with music. Hopefully you guys like that segment, because that is something that I can make consistent. But please, write in. Do you guys like it when I talk about music? Do you guys like it when I talk about sports? Because that's really all I got other than like current events and stuff. So you guys got to write in. Because Friday I was definitely thinking of telling you guys something that happened to me last week. Maybe we'll cover some sports stuff. And I was going to cover the music segment again. I got a couple bands that I think you guys might like if you guys are into the same music that I'm into. And hopefully I'm also back up to 100% by Friday. Although I gotta be honest, I kind of like the rasp in my voice. Kind of makes me sound a little bit more sexy. At least in my opinion. I could be totally wrong. But I'm hoping that the sickness goes away, but the voice kind of remains. But if you guys did like this episode, please share it with a friend. Please like, subscribe, comment, give me that 5-star rating. It really does help boost this thing more than you guys know. And please, feel free to write in. You can email me at lnbemedia@gmail.com. And also feel free to check me out on my socials. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the LNBE Pod. Although I feel like by next month, TikTok is no longer going to be a thing. So we'll figure that out as we go along. But all right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And I will catch up with you on Friday.